When a cell is not optimized, when a cell is weakened, when it's in its stress state, stress cells become stress tissues, become stress organs, becomes stress systems. And all of a sudden you turn on things that increase inflammation, you decrease your immunity, and depending on which cells are affected in your body, that's the disease you have.
Welcome to Ending Chronic Disease, where we challenge everything you thought you knew about health. Join international bestselling author and wellness pioneer, Dr. Fabrizio Mancini, as he reveals how to transform your body, your mind, and your life starting today.
Hi, everyone. It's so exciting to be here. I'm Dr. Fab Mancini, and I'm super excited today because we're talking about health. We're talking about ending chronic disease. We're talking about your quality of life. Right now, we know that 90% of the healthcare costs in the United States alone are chronic disease driven. We know that the quality of health of our children is decaying every single year more and more. We know that the obesity rates and the heart disease and the cancers are skyrocketing, not to talk about the mental health component of our citizens, that they're really struggling with depression, anxiety, and even suicidal thoughts. So I wanted to bring to you one of my mentors, one of my dear friends, somebody that is out there every single day inspiring millions of people into putting health as a top priority. And his name is Dr. Kien Vuu. And Kien is affectionately known as Dr. V. He's a leading world expert in regenerative and integrative medicine. He's a best-selling author. He's the founder of the groundbreaking Thrive State methodology, combining his extensive training in Western medicine with innovative approaches to holistic healing. Dr. Vuu empowers people worldwide to transform their health by unlocking their body's innate potential for resilience, longevity, and peak performance. Kien, it's so great to see you, man. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while.
I have as well. And as you're speaking there, your energy had just created a little bit of goosebumps. And I think part of today's conversation will be focused a little bit about energy and being conscious of the energy we are living by that unlocks our health and performance.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this Thrive State, because you have written the book, you have been lecturing in many of the talk shows, you've been lecturing all over the world regarding this topic, and it's a biological state that optimizes your health. But explain to someone that is currently potentially facing a chronic disease, how is it that they can begin this shift towards this new state called the Thrive State?
Well, thank you so much for that question. And as you say that, I am very optimistic. And what I want to be able to let people know is, but hopefully by the end of this 1 hour, you will learn everything I've learned in medical school to be able to really take control and claim your life. So we talked a little bit about energy and the beautiful energy Dr. Fab had. And I think to understand the Thrive State, we have to understand that the world and everything around us is energetic. We've got solar energy from the sun. We've got sound energies, traveling in the winds. We've got physical chemical energies that we put into our mouth. Each form of these energy is information. And information is always transferred to one or another. So the first thing we need to understand is, what exactly is health? Well, health and human performance is really an optimization of all the systems that are happening inside our body. We have cells that make tissues, that make organs, that make systems that make up who we are as human beings. And for us to have optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, really what it is having optimized cells. Optimized cells creates all the downstream effects that gives us optimal health. So then we ask the question, well, what is disease? Well, disease is really this. When a cell is not optimized, when a cell is weakened, when it's in its stress state, stress cells become stress tissues, become stress organs, becomes stress systems. And all of a sudden you turn on things that increase inflammation, you decrease your immunity, and depending on which cells are affected in your body, that's the disease you have. So the root cause of almost every single disease begins at the cellular health. So the next question is, where does cellular health come from? We used to think that we got our health from our parents, from our genes, that we got passed down from mom and dad. They were obese, so I would be obese. They had cancer, potentially it's going to come into me. Those are written in our genes, but that's actually not true. The DNA is just the code book that is constantly listening to its external environment, and it will react to that. But where's this energy stuff coming from? Well, as I mentioned, light, sound, feeling, emotions, food, toxins, they're all energy, and the DNA is constantly listening to its energetic environment. This is the concept of epigenetics. Epi meaning above the genes. So if the cell is given the right epigenetic cues, the right state, the right energy, what I call the thrive state, you'll have a healthy cell that leads to healthy tissues, healthy organs, these systems that creates a healthy you. If your cells are given the wrong cues, poor food, toxins, no sleep, etc., that energy affects the cell. The cell starts to feel stressed. And then we begin the path of chronic disease and poor symptoms like brain fog, bloating. And so what we have on two ends of the spectrum is really living our life, our highest potential, performing at our very best on one side, and then on the other side is chronic symptoms and chronic disease. So when we talk about the state, we're talking about the energetic environment that is in our body that we feel. The next question is this: what controls that state? And are we conscious of the choices that we're making in that state? Why would people that have all the health books still make wrong choices? Well, let me just tell you that if you happen to be suffering from a chronic disease right now, or you've got symptoms of brain fog, joint pains, you can't lose weight, look, I've been there. I was a medical doctor. I was trained at UCLA, the National Institutes of Health, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. And they don't teach us this stuff in medical school, unfortunately. We can go into that problem a little bit later. But, you know, I think I also need to share this. You know, when I was a kid, I was an immigrant coming from post-war Vietnam. And when I came to America, I was constantly being teased. And I always felt like I wasn't good enough or I wasn't worthy. And so I always thought that I had to be something other than me. And so I was constantly in a program of, I need to succeed, I'm not enough. And so I became the medical doctor, I hustled. And so my entire life, I was making these unconscious choices. I knew good sleep was good, but I had to succeed. I knew good food was good for me, but I was in the hospital. So I was making these unconscious choices that created the bioenergetic environment of my cells. And I was in a stress state, which is why 10 years ago, I was overweight, diabetic, and high blood pressure on prescription medications. Now, I have to say that at the time, being a medical doctor and having chronic disease, like I felt like a failure. But I think this is really the opportunity we have at this moment. You know, we do have people with chronic disease. We do probably have the sickest country in the world, but my disease was a gift. It was a symptom that I wasn't living aligned to who I was. And so it was the process of waking up, of recognizing how I was living my life. Oh my God, I was living life unconsciously. How could I start to make new choices to shift the energetic states of my body? That's the empowering thing. If we become a little more conscious, moment to moment, of the choices that we make, we ultimately control the fate of our success out in the world and the health that we have in our body. I'll stop there for a second and we can unwrap anything you want.
Well, no, that's great, because one of the things that I've been very clear with our audience is the fact that it's our choices that we make every day is what's leading us to be either healthier or unhealthier. So let's talk a little bit about, because you mentioned that you were traditionally trained as a medical doctor, and even though you worked in hospitals and you have some of the best credentials out there, you found yourself sick with chronic disease. Well, you mentioned a few of them, and not having the health that you thought maybe you would have at such a young age. Now, how do you feel is the best way for people out there to understand that even though they may be going to a traditional medical doctor and they may not get maybe some of the opinions that a functional doctor or a holistic natural provider may give them, how do they discern about where does really traditional medicine fit in, and why is it that it's failed to really help us reduce the chronic disease numbers in not only America, but around the world?
Well, unfortunately, I have to probably say this, that the medical establishment and medical education has been hijacked probably for a very long time now. We have, back when I was a resident, they had just instilled the 80-hour work week. But it was right around that process, or right around that time, that it happened. It happened probably 3 years before I became a resident. And there were colleagues of mine, surgical residents, that you were deemed weak if you reported your institution for working you more than 80 hours. So people were still even afraid to report that. Now, earlier on, how did this residency program begin? Well, there was a Dr. Haskell over at Johns Hopkins that actually came up with this whole residency program. And they created a culture where you just had to work and prove yourself to be tough, to be able to handle these tough situations. What he also did was he was a surgeon himself, and so he favored surgeries and favored prescriptions over holistic care. And that's really began the training of medical residents. Now, I want everyone to know this, that if you happen to be going to a traditional doctor who might not necessarily be aware of functional medicine, I want you to know that their heart is probably in a good place. I started off as a medical doctor. I really wanted to help people. But then you come into a system and you start to get indoctrinated about what health is. That, if there's this symptom, I prescribe this medication. If it's this symptom, maybe surgery is the next option. We didn't understand the root causes of disease. In functional medicine, we go through the 7 different type of systems that make up the body, that traditional medicine doesn't really look at how these systems interconnect with each other. And they look at a symptom, if it's coming from a heart, you go to a heart doctor and he's got some heart meds. You've got a knee pain, you'll go to a orthopedics, he's got surgery or some pain meds. Nobody's going to the underlying root cause. And to break it down easily, so you don't have to understand the 7 systems, is really understanding bioenergetics and what information we're giving to our cells. We weren't taught that in medical school. In fact, we were raised in this culture of having to work, saying no to ourselves. What access do we have? We didn't get any training on nutrition, and so we ate where we worked, at hospitals. And unfortunately, there were fast food restaurants in the hospitals that I worked in. And it's no wonder that, we get drained, because if we start to look at it, we were in a culture, and many of the doctors become so indoctrinated that they were unconscious of life, thinking how I best survive is to say no to myself, keep working, keep using these protocols that we learned. And trust me, I did all the protocols, I did the surgeries, I prescribed the medications, but patients kept coming back. And it was a real wake-up call when I got chronic disease myself. When I became that statistic, I had to wake up. And so what I would say to answer your question, and sorry for the long introduction there, is how do you start to discern? Well, if you happen to be going to a doctor that's not really hearing you, if you're going to a doctor that unfortunately only has 10 to 15 minutes with you and only asks about that one symptom and doesn't really have time to be able to, dive into all these areas, if they're not auditing your life in these 5 areas, so these are the 5 most important areas to audit as a doctor. Most functional and integrative doctors will ask you what's in the physical space. How is your sleep? How is your nutrition? Are you moving every day in the physical realm? What about the mental realm? Where's your thoughts? What are you focused on every day? Are you stressed out? Where are your emotions? Every day, are you in states of calm, gratitude, joy, or do you find yourself stressed out, angry, resenting? What about your social connections? Are they deeply bringing energy into your life, or are they draining them? And then finally, spiritual, which is really understanding, are you really who you are? Are you truly living as you? The things that bring you joy, the things that light you up, that inner child in you, are you doing those things and serving the people around you? Because those are the 5 things that people can most control to control their bioenergetic state. Now, I would probably say that if you focus on those things, if you audit your life in those areas and start to make new changes in those areas, your disease symptoms would either disappear or reverse altogether, or it will tune down to very little. What a functional medicine doctor can do at that point is, what are the other things, which are basically toxins or chronic infections that they can help get rid of? But, be very empowered that the majority of things is in your hands. And so how do you start to discern? Somebody that truly understands your health will understand your bioenergetics by at least asking you how your life is doing in those 5 areas.
I love it. And, one of the things that I've learned from you over the years is, and you speak about it, is the power of the mindset. And you mentioned a little bit about it, but I want to be a little bit more specific. What do you feel is the mindset that is required in today's time, not only to perhaps reverse chronic disease, if you may be having that, but more importantly, prevent it? Because I'm really concerned about the new generation of children, that their lives are not expected to outlive their parents' lives, right? I mean, that to me is a statistic that is extremely alarming, because to have a child that potentially may not outlive you because of a chronic disease, that's a serious, serious business. They say the biggest pain that any human being will ever undergo is the loss of a child. Emotional pain, I mean. So my question to you is this: from a mindset perspective, do you have a particular mindset hack or something that you feel somebody may consider adapting in order to live that optimum health that they're so much seeking?
Yeah. Well, 5 to thrive, 5 affirmations, and I'll kind of break down why this is the case. Why did I get disease? Well, I think, a lot of people resonate with my story when I tell it, because I think growing up as a child, everybody probably, feels some aspect of I'm not worthy enough or I'm not good enough. As children, if we don't feel seen, heard, or loved, that's a pain for us. And we try to get that by adapting. I have to change myself to do this, or I need to be more successful to get love. Then unfortunately, there are people that actually have like bigger traumas, like drug, divorce, neglecting their families. So these things shape us in our childhood. And unfortunately, what these big traumas or little traumas do is we start to protect ourselves with coping mechanisms, either being aggressive, being people-pleasing, shifting a little bit of who we are, and we live in that state. And that state is driven by a very primitive part of our brain called the default mode network, which is, the part of our brain that's the fear and survival autopilot mode of the brain. And that bit basically just is on unless you're conscious of it. And when we talk a little bit about mindset, it's, do we understand that there is this default mode lurking in the background if we don't choose to think what we want to think or how we want to behave? Which is why, as a medical doctor, when I had that mindset of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I made these unconscious choices. And so how do we start to wake up from that? Well, one, I think it's truly understanding a little bit about our old programming. Are there versions of us that are aggressive, avoidant, people-pleasing? That's not the full authentic versions of us. Now, the default mode is active because as a child, you either didn't feel safe, loved, or connected. And then all of a sudden, if you didn't get those things, you would try to cope some way to be able to get them. And that becomes the seat of your ego. And so the first 3 of those affirmations is really putting yourself in states, and we can go over, how to put ourselves into those states, but recognizing that you are safe. And what does safe feel like in your body? 2, loving yourself. Oh my gosh, it took me decades to understand I didn't love myself. And to feel that, and then to feel connected to something much, much bigger. I think those 3 things, if you adopt those 3 things, you kind of turn off that default mode. And then the 2 other things is really identifying who you are. Are you joy? Are you generous? Are you connected? And you pick 5 things because it's easy for you to remember. I am love, I am joy, I'm connected. And for me, I am unconditional love for other people, and I serve at my highest as well. And these core values in me, I stick with me. And then I also understand this. I also understand, I've read the book Thrive State. I understand that my thoughts and my emotions drive everything, and I am health. And so if you have that empowerment and you know, then you can start to make a little bit more conscious choice every single day, because the unconscious choices that we're making because there's some part of us that is in fear and survival mode. And remember, when you're in fear and survival mode, there's something in your brain that's been wired, to feel that you're not safe, you're not loved, or you're not connected.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to pick your brains on is the idea of raising a healthy family, healthy children. As parents, we have a lot of responsibility because we are the decision makers of what food we buy, typically what healthcare coverage we have, what healthcare providers we choose for not only ourselves, but our children. What would be some of the suggestions that you will give a parent right now that is listening and watching this, that you have found to be great habits in raising a healthy child?
Yeah. I've got a 4-year-old, I've got an 11-year-old, and I can tell you this, that you raise and teach your child not by what you tell them, but by who you are. They watch you, they model you, and they feel the energy in the home. Who you are. If you happen to be, with a significant other, they understand the chemistry, and they see there's love there, they see there's disconnection there. If you happen to be a single parent, they understand and feel the fear that's in you as well. So we have to understand this, that human beings they've got Bluetooth receptors on each other, and they could feel each other's feelings. So your bioenergetic state is what they will pick up. That becomes immersed in their nervous system and what they learn. And so, we are all doing our best, and we're all learning, and we should never beat ourselves up for the unconscious choices that we occasionally make. We're always going to be better at that. But if you recognize the responsibility that you have, so let's talk a little bit about, why people ask for family history, when it pertains to, for disease. Some people say it's a genetic component. Oh, you've got high blood pressure, you're obese, all these things. That's actually not truly the case. Maybe 5-10% of that might be true. What you are inheriting is you're inheriting the epigenome. You're inheriting the bioenergetic state. You're inheriting the habits, the thoughts of your parents. And if you live that way, you're going to turn on the genes that create disease in you. And so that's how powerful it is. And, I can tell you right now, I am not perfect. I catch myself in the default mode. I catch myself making unconscious choices, and then I have to, gently wake myself up. And so I think we are all in a process, and certainly we could all be doing better. But I hope that we who are parents really take the responsibility and seeing that your children follow everything you do. If you're stuck on your phone, guess what? They're going to want more screen time. If all you have is Lucky Charms all over the house, guess what they're going to want? And so how do we start to model that? And how do we start to build in family time? So movement is great for me. Being out in nature is great for me. Oh, okay. How do I take my daughter and enjoy that time, enjoy that connection? And for me as a father, power and presence and truly being there, if I recognize that I am broadcasting information from who I am to her, I want to be as conscious and as present and aware of that as I can. Those things go a long way. And certainly, because we just talked about, how the default mode gets activated, certainly if you can give your children the signals of safety, love, and connection, and let them know, even though they're going through emotional tantrums, even though they're doing things maybe that you don't like, you can be grounded for them, understand their emotions, but still give them back the messages of safety, love, and connection.
That is amazing. Now, in closing, I wanted to ask you this question. I find that you mentioned earlier that many times it's who you are that determines whether your children listen to you. But I also think it's the same with people out there that you come in contact with, whether you are a business owner and you have employees, they're watching you. They're looking at you. If you happen to be a leader in your community, a mayor or a congressman or a state representative, they're watching you. If you happen to be a teacher, your class is watching you. So what would you say are potentially maybe 3 or 5 daily rituals that you have come to identify in your very successful career, not only as a provider that is helping millions of people, but in your own personal health? Because I'm very gifted to have known you for a while, and I have been around you and I've seen your habits. But what would you say for somebody out there that's looking for some insight as to what are some rituals that you have figured out that you do not miss because you know the impact, the benefits that it brings to your health state?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. And as I give you those rituals, I want to give you one framework to go by in terms of choosing, consciously. And the acronym is IMPACT, which is IMPACT. Life is going to throw you things. You're going to have a lot of different types of emotions. You can make conscious or unconscious choices. But if you remember impact, and every time I do these things throughout the day, I think impact. I am. Who are you? Are you safe, loved, connected? Are you powerful? Are you generous? Who are you as a person? If you remember who you are and you constantly choose that version of yourself, no matter what life throws at you, you are going to become that and live that. So when life throws something at you, say you get in an argument with a spouse, which happens, you get triggered. The next thing you do is you pause. And one of these things that I do throughout the day, 4-7-8 breathing, where I breathe in through my nostril for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, then out as if I was blowing through a straw for a count of 8. That grounds me. That long exhale is going to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. You've created space. A is awareness. Oh, I just got triggered. I just felt angry. I just felt resentment. Where is it happening in your body? Be aware of that. Where is that coming from? Is it coming from old stories or beliefs? Most likely it is. It's a part of us that needs to be healed. Then you choose. You choose consciously from your I am, those things that you wanted to be: joy, love, connected, courageous, the example that you want to be for your children. You choose that, then you take action from that place. If you remember that phrase throughout the day, what are the things? The things I do throughout the day are basically things that bring up my energy and things that bring me in energies of calm so that I could choose consciously. And the first thing I do, I have to make sure, and I think most people in life are dehydrated, but I make sure I hydrate in the morning. I drink at least 10 ounces of water, maybe mix them with some electrolytes, and I go out and I walk my dog in the morning, and I get the early morning rays. We are diurnal animals, meaning we've got different biological processes that happen in the day and the night. And if we don't get sunshine early in the morning, our body doesn't know what's going on. They think you're in Vegas the whole time, and it's a wreck. Okay. And then the next thing I do is movement. There are movements that I do, and I could probably share a link for your audience a little bit later, but there are movements that I do, Qigong practices that actually bring energy into me in terms of how I breathe. There are breathwork techniques that I do throughout the day. One is a breath of fire technique. So that 4-7-8 breathing brings you to states of calm. Then there are breathing techniques such as the breath of fire. People can look it up on YouTube, that actually bring you energy. That's going to be super key of being able to do so. Then I make sure that I'm not indoors the entire day, and I could get to be outdoors a little bit to be able to ground. I build in connection time with at least one new person that I haven't connected with in a while and really feel that. In the evening, I have a journaling routine where I just get to assess my day. And some days I made some unconscious choices. Some days I made some great choices. I reflect on that. And it's really mastering and understanding that with your focus with your intention, you can cultivate feeling in your body. You can cultivate feeling love. You can cultivate feeling gratitude. Really, you become your own internal pharmacy where you can focus on intention and attention on feeling. And so at the end of the evening, after I do my journaling, I'm really focusing that intention of feeling love, feeling gratitude, and feeling safe, because so many people aren't sleeping because they're worried about what they have to do the next day and the next day and the next day. The default mode is just circling on. And so it's recognizing, basically I gave a bunch of little tiny things throughout the day, but it's recognizing we are a bioenergetic curator, that the things that we do, how we move, how we breathe, where we put our focus, we're actually shifting the energy. And if we're shifting the energy and become really clear of who we want to show up as, my friend, that is the key of basically unlocking your potential and unlocking the health and success you want in your life.
Well, what's beautiful about listening to you is the fact that you can tell you're living it. And to me, there's nothing more powerful than that. I've seen you live it. Now the people that are watching you and listening to you right now can feel that you're living it. What would you say is if there was one thing that would be a transformational decision that people can make right now to go from whatever state they're in their health to where they want to be in the future, what would you say is one thing that they should consider doing right now?
Just know that you are a miracle. My daughter almost didn't make it out, when she had a troubled birth. And in that moment, I was just like, wow, how precious is life? What are the odds here to be alive? And we do the work to remember that we are loved. We do the work to remember that we are connected. And if you can remember those things, like right now, if you could just, wow, I am alive. This is extremely a miracle. Can I tap into the fact that I must be loved so much that I am here and that I'm connected with everyone else? And you can start to see other people as really being connected with you. Everything shifts. It quiets down all of your stress. And, I think just really tapping into that is going to be a game changer.
I would agree with you. And I want to say thank you so much for making this time for us. And for those of you that are listening, I would encourage you to follow Dr. Vuu. Number one, you can read his book. I'm going to put the links right here where you can actually get a tremendous amount of resources from him. But more importantly, to really tap into his consciousness, tap into his wisdom, tap into his understanding of what it is to be healthy. Because, having gone through the training he went through and the evolution into understanding that traditional medicine has its miracles and we all appreciate the value, but that the big issue, the biggest challenges of today, which we call chronic disease, are not being solved by chemistry or surgeries. We need to get enrolled in that process. Lifestyle, as he mentioned, epigenetics, is one of the biggest challenges that we are taking for granted. We are not focusing on the things that we can control. And the worst thing about it is that we're making bad choices every single day and then blaming everybody else for the way that we feel, right? And the reality of it is right now, the answer is within you. The answers are in the choices you're making. I think Dr. Vuu explained it so well that you have the power. And it begins with shifting your mindset. Begin to see yourself as a healthy human being, no matter where you are right now in your health, but begin to see yourself as the potential of that health. And then let that upgrade thinking help you make better choices. Because when you can see yourself as a healthy human being, you're going to make a better choice than you made yesterday, because now you're not acting as the same person you did yesterday. You're saying, hey, I have the potential to have more energy. I have the potential not to be depressed. I have the potential not to be obese. I have the potential to lower my blood pressure. I have the potential to have a low cholesterol. All of that is within your choices every single day. And I'm super excited because now I feel so inspired to continue this journey. And not only that, but help you understand that your health has to be your number one priority because it controls pretty much everything else in your life. And we want you to be at a thrive state when it comes to that health. So pick up the book, follow him in social media. More importantly, go to his website because you'll get a lot of tremendous resources while you're there. God bless you, and I will see you soon.
To learn more about Dr. Fabrizio Mancini's groundbreaking work, visit www.endingchronicdisease.com and join the movement. Together, we can end the silent epidemic of chronic disease and create a healthier, more vibrant world. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, be well and stay inspired.